Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us to discuss the issue paper related to the clarification to the Reliability Must-Run Designation Process Initiative. My name is Isabella Nicosia, representing ISO Stakeholder Affairs, and I'll be facilitating the web conference today. I'm also joined on the line by our presenter, Catalin Mixa, Senior Advisor of Regional Transmission Engineer. And then we also have Jeff Billington, Director of Transmission Infrastructure Planning on the line, as well as Sydney Mannheim, Assistant General Counsel, Abdul Muhammad Ali, representing Operations Engineering Services, and Riddy Ray from Regulatory Contracts. And their names are also available in the panelist column on the right-hand side of your screen. The presentation and paper for today's call were posted out on the initiative webpage. Before we get started, I want to go through just a few housekeeping items. So these calls are being recorded. The recording is for informational and convenience purposes only, and any related transcriptions should not be reprinted without the ISO's permission. This meeting is structured to stimulate dialogue and engage different perspectives, and while we always welcome feedback and comments, just a reminder to please keep those professional and respectful. And then lastly, just please try and be brief and refrain from repeating what has already been said so that we can manage the time efficiently and address as many comments and questions as possible today. So for raising your hand in WebEx, we did update the platform a little bit, so it'll be slightly different than our former process. So if you connected to audio through your computer or had the WebEx call you, you'll need to select the raise hand icon, which is located on the top right of the chat window. If you connected to audio through your phone separately, then you'll need to press #2 on your telephone keypad to enter the question queue. If at any time during today's call you need technical assistance, you can send a chat to the event producer. Her name is Shreyas. And then just please remember to state your name and affiliation before making your comment. If you do have a question, you can also send it through the chat to myself. Again, my name is Isabella Nicosia, or you can send it to all panelists. But if you do decide to send your question through the chat, please be sure to state your organization name. This slide here shows where we are currently at in the policy initiative stakeholder process. So we're here in proposal development at the issue paper. And the agenda for today will start with an introduction and background for the initiative, as well as go into some of the purpose. And then we will cover topics and issues to consider when choosing the primary reliability need, as well as the time required to mitigate local and system reliability needs. And then we'll wrap up the call today with an open discussion to take stakeholder feedback, and then cover the proposed initiative schedule and next steps. So with that, I will hand it over to Catalin, and we'll get started with some introduction and background.
Thank you very much, Isabella. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. So just a background how we got here. Basically, the ISO, we took the Agnew's power plant retirement notice, and we've done our studies, and we found out that Agnew's is needed full local. As such, we went to the board in July, and we asked board to approve Reliability Must-Run designation as local for 2022, which the board did. While we were going through a stakeholder process with this, pointed out that, the ISO reliability studies actually drive the designation type. And while the tariff does say that, the ISO can do other studies in addition to the local capacity studies, it's currently was pointed by PG&E and CCA that the tariff is really not clear as to which one of these is the primary reliability need, the local oil system, if we actually have both. And as such, at the board's direction, the ISO is opening the stakeholder process in order to clarify which one is the primary reliability need if we have more than one. Next page, please. Okay, so that same point appears here. Basically, we're here to make sure that we clarify which type of the designation is the primary between local and system. Just to remind everybody, the reliability need actually triggers two things. It triggers the cost allocation, and also it triggers the resource adequacy credit allocations as dictated by 41.9 and 41.8 in the ISO tariff. Next slide, please. I'm going to enumerate a few issues that we all need to consider when choosing the primary reliability need. Basically, historically, ISO has considered local the primary reliability need. However, as we all know, we've never had a system reliability need until this year. So that's just a fact that the ISO staff always consider local the primary reliability need. The second was basically if the primary need is local, the responsible utility has an incentive to build transmission to eliminate that. That has been true for many years. We need to consider that because if we consider the system to be the main reliability need, then for as long as the system reliability need is there, then the local utilities most likely won't have an incentive to fix the local reliability need. The customers located in that TAC area where the reliability need exists will benefit most from the contract. We all agree that while the unit is under the RMR contract, it can be used to mitigate all reliability needs. So in real time, once the unit is RMR, it can actually be used to mitigate local as well as the system. However, overall, the customers in that TAC local area will benefit the most because they can use the unit both for system and for local versus other people in other parts of the control area can only use it for the system reliability needs. Generally, there is a premium paid for local resources. If you go through the CPUC RA reports for a number of years back, usually the local resources on average have a higher cost than the system resources. And, that just plays into the idea that there is an added benefit and value to the LSEs with the load there. Another thing that we will also want to be mindful of is that if the system-wide is considered the primary reliability need, the current RMR contract, because we believe we do have a need for this year and very likely is going to be the same need for next year for the system, that they'll have to be most likely converted to the system-wide need. Now, while I'm talking to you here, you realize later on that this stakeholder initiative, it will take a while to take to the board. So I just want to be very frankly upfront with everybody that, we would not be able to go through the whole stakeholder process, get something approved, get a tariff or a BPM change through before we need to actually extend the contract this in about a month from now. So the contract that we have today, we believe that will have to be extended with whatever is the ISO's understanding of our current tariff. So they will be extended for the same reason they were signed up for to begin with, if that need is still there. That being stated, we are willing to change the way we're doing things after this gets implemented and starting next year. So I just want to bring to your attention that we don't envision that whatever we do today can result in any definite change to ISO's interpretation of our tariff between now and the middle of September or towards the end of September when we have to extend the existing RMR contracts. Next slide, please. This just basically shows the units that were in the RMR contracts for about the last 10 years or so. and the reasons they were under RMR contract. This slide just tries to grasp the idea that usually the local issues take a long time to get fixed. And while you can look at maybe Yuba City, Feather River, and Metcalf Energy Centering being removed from this list, they're actually still needed for local today. They're just removed because they actually had an RA contract. Otherwise, they'll probably still be under this RMR contract. So, what we're trying to suggest here is that another thing to consider is that the local problems usually take a long time to get fixed. We do not expect, at least the ISO does not expect to stay into a system-wide reliability need, for too long. We expect that the load-serving entities and generation developers will come up to the conclusion then, if we are short now that, we're going to have to do something quickly here in the next year or two to get ourselves out of that system-wide problem. Next slide, please. So I guess that's all I really had to present on my own end. So I'm just going to open it up for stakeholder discussion or questions.
To submit a written question, select all panelists from the drop-down menu in the chat panel, enter your question in the message box provided, and send. If you are using the WebEx audio, you may enter the question queue by using the WebEx raise hand icon located just above the chat panel. You'll hear a beep tone when your line is unmuted. At that time, please state your name and question. If you're just on the phone line and not on the WebEx, please dial #2 on your phone. You'll hear a notification when you're unmuted. At that time, please state your name and question. I do see one caller in the queue. Caller, please go ahead. Your line is unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, hi, this is Lauren Carr from CalCCA. I was wondering if you could go back to slide 8, please. I just had a question on the last bullet. I was wondering if you could clarify my understanding of the length of RMR contracts. Is it correct that they're for 1 year long, and then after the year's up, the CAISO can reevaluate and see if there's still a need for the RMR and then extend it if there is? I'm just trying to think through the impacts of any changes that would happen, if they could be done on a going forward basis rather than converting existing contracts.
Yes, you are correct, Lauren. So the RMR contracts are for 1 year at a time. And based on the contract, the ISO has to let the owner know before October 1st if we would be extending that for the next year. And we reevaluate the need for that generation before October 1st. And we go to the board and ask board for an approval to extend the RMR contract or to cancel them.
Okay, thanks. And then I just had one more kind of general question. Like you mentioned, the reliability need is is what informs the cost allocation and RA credits. I was wondering if the ISO's thought about when there's a resource that meets both the system and local need, if the ISO is thinking about a way to allocate costs and credits for both of those needs so that the customers who are benefiting from the RMR are allocated a portion of those costs, meeting both reliability needs if there is a system and local need.
Yes, currently we do not have a hybrid allocation of the tariff. It's very specific that the cost allocations goes in the TAC where the need arises. It just, I guess, never found out that what if there is more than one need. Some just in a few TAC and another one in multiple TACs. We don't have the hybrid right now. I guess we can propose to have a hybrid one.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, we'll think about that and put some of our thoughts in comments.
Moving on to the next caller. Caller, please go ahead. Your line is unmuted.
Hi, my name is St. McIntosh. I'm with San Diego. I have a question, Caitlin, for the kind of economic reasoning on the consequences of your innovation and going from local to system understanding for a particular RA contract. You mentioned that in doing that, there's a reduction in incentive for a load serving entity to say build some transmission that would get around an RA issue or a capacity issue, because it reduces the amount of the deferral, which is in the local capacity price range. And I can see how the mechanics of that would work. But on the other hand, it doesn't entirely annihilate the incentive, right? It depends on the magnitudes of the cost of the investment and on the number of megawatts of improvement. So it may impact it, but I don't see that it kind of undermines the whole concept. Is that right?
That's correct. It probably is not going to, result in elimination of a project, but it might result in delays of certain projects.
Yeah. Well, there's another thing point is that you made, which I think is interesting, is that you say that the trouble is with this allocation, this issue, move from the local impact designation to a system impact designation, then you're able to spread a lot of the costs over the system rather than just over the incumbent area, and yet not entirely. So there's sort of a residual there that presents a problem. But I do have to ask this question, which is, well, if that agent, that LLC, has the small piece of the network which has the problem, then shouldn't he be paying more than average for fixing that problem if he's essentially the only guy who can fix that problem and the guy who may be said to have caused that problem?
Yeah, I guess the problem is not caused by any specific LSE because the load serving entities don't own the transmission. But so FERC already ruled on this years ago when the ISO started with this, 20 years ago. So basically, right, some of the load serving entities are captive, based on how the transmission system was built, and they should all share within a certain pact. They should all share of the cost of needing to buy local resources, regardless that you are located in a local area or not. So I don't think we are willing to open that concept up since the FERC already ruled on that before.
Okay, so you're saying FERC has determined that all the LSCs are in it together, and so that the cost of using a local resource is going to be socialized over all users?
The cost of the, capacity required to mitigate the local needs, it is currently, yes, it's spread to all the load serving entities within that cap because all of them are paying that tax.
Okay. Well, then I think I see your point that then if there's no differential between the local TAC, the local LSC and the non-local, then there's less incentive for mitigating this with a piece of transmission hardware. That's true, but still the magnitude of the displaced megawatts will really make the budget work, right?
I'm not sure exactly what we're entailing here. So the cost of the RMR contract goes to load serving entities. The transmission owner is the one that's losing the incentive to speed up the transmission projects that's required to eliminate that local area. It's not the load serving entity. So I don't view those as tied up together.
Okay. All right. That's true. I was telescoping that. Okay. But okay, in any case, it doesn't seem to me that this is like a determinative issue. I mean, it does, like I was saying before, kind of shift the balance, but it doesn't actually eliminate incentive for a transmission owner to do a project. In fact, a transmission owner who's not even close to this could find it in his interest to build that mitigation that maybe is centered in a certain local area, right? It depends on the finances and the cost of the elements.
Yes, I'm not sure that we were trying to suggest that the projects in the local area will get canceled, but it sure gives an incentive to the participating transmission owner to delay those local projects if if there is nothing, there's no incentives for them to move forward until the system reliability need is fixed, basically.
Right.
They're losing some incentive there.
Okay. Thanks.
I do not see any further callers in the queue.
Okay, thank you, everybody. The schedule that we have laid out for us is if you could please submit your comments in writing in the next 2 weeks, and then we'll have a straw proposal coming in September and October, and then we'll have a final coming in November. We are planning to go to our board at the December board meeting. As I said, if any changes are envisioned and are approved, then those will come in place next year. This September, the ISO will have to move forward with our current understanding of the tariff.
Have any questions on the schedule or any of the other topics discussed today?
I see one caller in the queue. Caller, please go ahead. Your line is unmuted.
Hi, this is Todd Ryan from PG&E. I apologize for not getting in the queue a little earlier. I have one question. If you guys have had any thought in terms of what the process might be for RMR switching between system and local as system needs change, as resources come online or retire, or transmission projects come online. Thank you.
Yeah, so currently, the way the ISO looks at it, basically, so if currently we look at all the local problems, and if we have one, we designate it as local. If not, we start looking beyond the local problems. We look at system reliability needs. So if there's no local, we go to the system. And, again, when we redesignate, we looked at those same issues again currently. If we would move to a world where system comes first, I guess everybody needs to be moved to a system, and then everybody would stay on the system until the system problem disappears, and then we'll have to check for local after that. And if none of those resources are needed for local, they'll be let go. If some of them are needed, they'll have to move back to local. So basically, some of them will have to move. If the system becomes the primary reliability need, then we'll have to move probably all the current contracts to a system type and have a different cost allocation for them, and then flip them back up to local after the system has been fixed. If we stay the way it is, then the local stays until the problem is fixed, and then it's only getting moved to system if the system is still there. If the system is not there anymore, then basically the system units will be let go, and then the local system will be let go later.
But maybe I can be a little more specific in my question. We've seen RMRs get redesignated from year to year. The original designation being based on a thermal overload on a line, and then later changed to voltage support with no notification to the board or change in cost allocation because they were both local needs. I'm curious if there's any changes to the process that you might have thought of or might consider if, say, it was designated for a local, and then the local transmission owner puts in a fix or new resources come online, and then CAISO reevaluates and finds that it's the same resources needed for system.
Yeah, so okay.
Would that go back to the board with the cost allocation change?
Yeah. Yes, that would go back to the board for the next year, and then it will be justified as a change in need. So basically, if the local need, it really doesn't really matter what local need drives the need. I mean, we have to look at all the standards, and sometimes one can be more binding than another one. So we usually talk about the worst one. So if somehow that worst one gets eliminated, but we still have a secondary, a third, or fourth need, then we have to talk about what need is left. But let's just assume for the moment that all the local needs are gone. There is no more local need. Then we will go and evaluate the system need. And if the system need is there, then we would go to the board and tell the board that this unit now, it's been extended. However, it's been moved from being a local to being a system evaluation need, and we can tell them what the actual need is.
Thank you.
I see one more caller in the queue. Caller, please go ahead. Your line is unmuted.
Hello, this is Kathleen Colbert from Vistra. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Catalin, I know you've said this a couple times. I just want to ask another clarifying question about the timeline. Am I understanding correctly that the timing would be stakeholdering through the end of the year, so no change to this fall's RMR assessment for any RMR extensions or releases for 2022, but this would change fall of 2022's assessment, which would feed into the type of contract that the 2023 RMRs would hold. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's our intention right now. We have to send the extension notices before October 1st, and we can't finish this initiative before October 1st.
Clarifying that, I appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thank you.
I do not see any further callers in the queue.
Okay. And for next steps, like Catalin said, we will be taking comments until August 31st, just 2 weeks from today, and you can submit your comments using the template that will be available out on the initiative webpage linked here on this slide. So do we have any other last questions before we conclude today? Okay. Well, thank you all for your participation. That concludes today's stakeholder call, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.